Hey, it's Andy with Overdrive Accounting, and today's video is about the 5 most common mistakes I normally see in QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online can dramatically reduce the time it takes to input all of your financial transactions, but if you're not careful, you can easily make a mess of your books. This video is going to show you how these mistakes happen, what the implications are, how to know if you're making the mistakes, and most importantly, how to fix them. The first most common mistake I want to talk about is duplicate sales transactions. Duplicate sales transactions are a common problem in QuickBooks Online. These duplicates can happen a few different ways, but the most common way that I see it happen is due to not matching invoice payments to the bank deposits in the bank feed. If you receive payment on an invoice and then in turn add the deposit without matching it in the bank feed, QuickBooks Online will record this transaction twice in your profit and loss. This is a problem because you're overstating your income, which can lead to budgeting problems or even paying more in income tax. Now, I know you're probably wondering how to figure out if you were doing this. The easiest way to find out if you were making this mistake is to go to your profit and loss statement. So once you have your profit and loss pulled up, we're going to drill down on sales. As you can see, we have two transactions, a deposit and an invoice on the same date for the same amount. This is a pretty good indicator that this is just a duplicated transaction that should only be recorded once. The next step is to drill down on your invoice and trace back to the receive payment screen. Okay, so as you can see on the receive payment, we are not matched to any transactions from the bank. And that's not what we want to see. Anytime that you are dealing with invoices or payment received from invoices, you want to see online banking matches on the receive payment screen. That is one way to ensure that you're not duplicating the transactions. Okay, so now that we have a pretty good idea that this is a duplicate, now let's fix it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the deposit. So anytime that you're dealing with transactions that were added straight from the bank feed, which would be either expenses or deposits, bank deposits, you are okay to delete those transactions because you're not going to have to recreate them. They're going to go right back into the bank feed and you're not going to lose any data. So we're going to go ahead and delete this transaction. All right, so we got rid of the bank deposit from the sales account. So we're going to jump back to our bank feed. Okay, and so now that that transaction is back in the bank feed, QuickBooks is trying to match that $500 deposit to a payment received on the invoice that we just saw. So you can go ahead and add or match the transaction from right here. But if for any reason it doesn't try to automatically match, you can click on the transaction. Now usually there'll be a find match button right here, but in this case we can get to the same spot from right here. Okay, so this will pull up all of the bank deposits in this date range. If you're still not seeing the deposit or the payment that you're looking for, try expanding your date range. Dates are really important whenever you're working inside QuickBooks Online. Normally, the transaction that you're looking for is just going to be hanging out just outside this date range. Just expand the date range. If you can't find it there, then most likely you have received payment to the wrong bank account is normally what I see. So we're going to go ahead and save. Okay, now that the transaction has been matched to the deposit, we are going to jump back into the profit and loss. I'm going to show you what it should look like. Okay, so we have our invoice here. Now we're going to trace it all the way back. We have our payment made on the 21st. You can see a deposit in the amount of $500 was deposited on 11/21. There you go. And now our bank deposit is linked up with the payment received on our invoice. And that is how you fix duplicate sales transactions in QuickBooks Online. And this brings us to the second most common mistake in QuickBooks Online, duplicate expense transactions. Now, similar to duplicate sales transactions, duplicate expense transactions are a result of not matching bill payments with the cash leaving the bank account. This will lead to overstating your expenses, which will understate your net income. This is once again an issue that will make accurate budgeting impossible and will make qualifying for a loan a bigger headache than it already is. Now, the first step is to determine if this is happening to you. Once again, we're going to go to the profit and loss. Now, in this example, we're going to be dealing with job supplies. So we're going to jump into our job supplies. And as you can see, we have two transactions for the same amount, an expense and a bill. Okay, so now just like with the duplicate sales transaction, we're going to try to trace back to an online banking match from our source document, like a bill or an invoice. So we're going to jump into our bill and we're going to follow back our payment. Okay, and as you can see, we do not have an online banking match. So just like we did earlier, our next step is we're going to jump into the expense. You can see this is an expense that was added straight from the bank feed. So just like with the bank deposit in the last example, it is okay to delete these because they're just going to end up back into the bank feed. You don't ever want to delete a bill or an invoice because then you're going to have to recreate those transactions. So we're going to delete the expense. We have our bill here alone in the job supplies account, what we want to see. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the bank feed. Okay, and there you can see Quickbooks is trying to match up the bill payment to the same amount that is leaving the bank account. Once again, if it doesn't automatically show up for you, you can try to find other records, expand your date range. We're going to go ahead and hit save. We're going to match the transaction. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the profit and loss. We're going to go into our job supplies account and trace back our bill to our bill payment and find our online banking match. And there you can see. So now we have matched the $1,500 leaving our bank account to the bill payment, which is linked to our bill. And that is how you fix duplicate expense transactions in QuickBooks Online. Okay, so that brings us to number 3 on the list, which is incorrectly accounting for transfers between bank accounts. Like the first two examples, incorrectly handling of these transactions can result in overstated income and expenses. They can lead to the same types of issues we already discussed, but the main point I'm trying to drive home is that these mistakes cause bad information, making it harder for you to try to run a business. So let's go ahead and get them corrected. Now, from my experience, miscategorized transfers can be tricky to catch. The reason for that is because a deposit in one account is an expense to the other. They're going to be the same dollar amounts, and when you're trying to go and reconcile these accounts, if it's added as a deposit on one account and an expense as another, and they're not tied to each other, you can't tell the difference. What will end up happening is it's going to inflate your numbers on your profit and loss by the same amount. So if your deposits or sales go up by $75 and your expenses go up $75, it's not necessarily going to change your bottom line, but it is going to inflate those numbers, which is still a problem. It's not accurate. We can fix it by just linking the transfer so QuickBooks knows that it's just moving the funds from one account to the other. One way to catch these transactions is sometimes QuickBooks will classify them as uncategorized expenses and add an uncategorized income on the profit and loss statement. So let's go ahead and pull up a profit and loss and see what we got. As you can see, our profit and loss statement contains both of these accounts. We have uncategorized income and uncategorized expenses. Now let's go ahead and start with the uncategorized income and see what's inside. Okay, so we can see we have two transactions here. We have a deposit and a credit card credit. Now right now we're looking for a transfer, so we don't need to worry about the credit card credit. Now let's go ahead and click on the deposit, see what we can find. Okay, so we have an account, uncategorized income, we have a description, we have a transfer from 3078 for $275. Okay, so this is looking like a transfer that was probably added. Let's see what the online banking match says. Okay, so we're saying this is a credit, $275, transfer from 3078. Okay, so this does appear to be a deposit that was just straight added from the banking feed. I'm pretty confident that's what's going on. We could just come over here and delete the transaction, but this is only half of the transfer. So let's go back to the profit and loss and see if we can find the other half. We'll close out the bank deposit, go back to the report summary, which is just the profit and loss statement. All right, and then we'll come down here to the uncategorized expense. Let's drill down there. Okay, so we can see we have one item in here, an expense. Let's click on it and see if we can get a little more information. Okay, so we have an uncategorized expense. We have a transfer to 3086. It's coming from checking 3078, just like the other part of the transaction was saying. It's an online banking match, so what's happened here is this is just an expense that was added straight from the bank feed, not linked to any other transaction. So it is going to be safe to go ahead and delete both sides of this transfer. They're just going to end up right back in the bank feed, so it's safe to delete them. Okay, so we get the expense deleted. We'll go back to the profit and loss statement. Okay, then we'll come back in here to the uncategorized income. We will go to the deposit. We're going to go ahead and delete this transaction, get it back to the bank feed. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our banking screen. Okay, we have one transaction in each of these accounts. Now, QuickBooks is not going to automatically match these transactions because it doesn't know any better. All it knows is that we have money leaving one account and money coming in the other account. They just happen to be the same amount. So what we're going to do, and it doesn't matter which account you start with, it's going to be the same process. You can click on the transaction. We are going to record transfer. Now, right now we have the checking 3078 account selected, so we are going to transfer to checking 3086. So we're going to hit the drop down. We're going to find 3086, and we're going to record transfer. Okay, then we're going to jump over here to 3086, and there you can see QuickBooks now realizes we're just transferring funds from one account to the other. We are going to click match, and that is how you fix a transfer that was added incorrectly into QuickBooks. Okay, so we'll move on to number 4, top common mistakes in QuickBooks Online. Number 4 on the list is the mishandling of credit card payments. While similar to some of the issues we already have discussed, credit card payments can both duplicate expenses and add sales to your profit and loss. The reason for this is credit card payments normally have 3 transactions related to it. First, the initial expense leaving the card. Second, the payment received from the bank account you paid from, and the payment from that account. In this example, I'm going to show you how this can go wrong, and then, of course, how to fix it. First, let's go back to the profit and loss statement. Get that pulled up. Okay, so we know that we paid for legal services with our Amex, so let's drill down on that account. Okay, so here we can see that we have 2 identical transactions, one from a checking account and one from our Amex. Let's drill down on the checking account transaction to find out more. Okay, so here we can see that it's an expense. It's got an online banking match. It was manually added. This looks like it's just a transaction that was added from the bank feed. It wasn't linked to any other transaction. We do have a description that's a payment to an Amex. Since we're not 100% sure what it is, let's go ahead and exit out, check out the other transaction before we decide to delete anything. So we'll come over here. We'll look at the Amex transaction. Okay, so we have an Amex charge going to the law office of Charlie. We have an online banking match that's manually added. Looks the same. So this is another, again, this is just a transaction in your credit card account on the banking feed that was added directly into QuickBooks without any matching or linking transaction. So since we're not 100% sure what's going on, let's go ahead and delete both of these transactions, get them back in the bank feed. Maybe we'll be able to make sense of it. Get that one deleted. We'll get this one deleted. Okay. Now that both transactions have been deleted, let's go to the bank feed to see if we can sort this mess out. Let's start with the Amex. So we can see this payment leaves Amex and goes straight to the law office of Charlie. Okay, that makes sense. Well, let's go check out the checking account before we do anything else. Okay, here we go. Now we can see that this charge leaving the checking account is going directly to American Express. Let's go ahead and transfer that amount to the American Express card, since now we're sure that's what it is leaving the checking account. So we've recorded the transfer. Okay, but what's going on? We don't have an online banking match. Where is the payment received from the checking account? So since we're sure that we've already dealt with it, what we're going to do is click right here on the Reviewed tab. And there you can see it. We have a thank you for a payment received in the amount of $370 added to uncategorized income. So we're going to go ahead and click on this link. It's going to take us to a credit card credit with an online banking match. Thank you for your payment. So what happened here was that payment was listed as a deposit on the Amex bank feed, and it was added straight in without being matched to anything, which is very common. And what happened is it got listed as uncategorized income. So since we're sure that it's not uncategorized income and it's not linked to any source transaction, we're going to go ahead and click More and Delete. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to For Review, and there you have it. We have the match coming from the checking account payment to the American Express card paying down the balance, and then we have the payment to the law office of Charlie for legal expenses. And we're going to go ahead and add that transaction. Okay, now that we got our credit card payments all squared away, everything looks good there. Let's go jump back into the profit and loss and just see what it looks like now after we have cleaned up our transfers, our sales duplicate, and our expense duplicates. So you can see our sales account is back down to just the one invoice of $500. We can click into the invoice. We can see that we have a payment link. We'll follow that back. On the receive payment screen, we have an online banking match. Exactly what we want to see. We want to be able to go from the invoice to the payment to the online banking match. All right, so let's get back to the profit and loss. Okay, let's look at our job supplies. We have $1,500. We have our one bill. Let's click into the bill and let's follow it back to the online banking match. We have our one payment made, which is linked up to an online banking match. Check 1,000. That is what we're looking for. So once again, let's go back to the profit and loss. Okay, and then you can also see we got rid of the uncategorized income and the uncategorized expense. The only thing left is the legal services that we handled with the Amex. And you can see it's just the one expense from the law office of Charlie. It shouldn't have any source transaction since we just added it straight from the Amex bank feed. Looks good. Everything's there. Perfect. And that is how you handle credit card transactions. Okay, so we've just cleaned up all of your duplicate transactions. We got rid of the uncategorized income and expenses, and you're getting ready to call today when all of a sudden it hits you like a sack of potatoes. You've been deleting these transactions after you just reconciled the accounts yesterday. This leads me to the last item on my list, the top 5 most common QuickBooks mistakes, reconciling after changes. So you might be thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to completely redo my last reconciliation just to add these few changes I just made. Don't even sweat it because I'm going to show you a quick and painless way to get your reconciliations back to that beautiful zero balance. First thing we're going to do is go up to the gear icon and click Reconcile. So we're going to pick our checking account, and there it is. You can see the red rectangle of death And it's saying that our beginning balance is off by $1,600. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit banking. We're going to go to our checking account. Then we're going to go right over here to the far right and click on Go to Register. Now, we already know the transactions that we were just doing with. It's going to be these 4 transactions. You can see that they are manually added from the bank feeds and they are cleared, tentatively reconciled. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just click on it. And we're going to click, it's going to bring up the edit screen. We're going to click on that C till it turns to an R. Click Save. Yes. Don't want that to show again. And we're going to do the same thing for all of these transactions. This is a quick, cool little trick that you can do in QuickBooks Online. It'll save you a ton of time because then you don't have to go back and reconcile the entire month just in order to fix just a few transactions. So just as a check figure, we're going to go back to the gear icon. We're going to go to Reconcile. We're going to pull up the checking 3078. And as you can see, the rectangle of death is gone and we are back to a good beginning balance, ready to reconcile the next month. And that concludes today's video, and I hope you found it useful. If you enjoyed the video, have any questions or videos you'd like us to make, comment below and we'll respond. If you don't want to wait and you need help with your QuickBooks, check out the link below to overdriveaccounting.com and you can book a meeting with us from there. Thanks for watching.